Senator Durbin.
Thank you, Senator Graham. Let me personally thank you for your leadership on this subcommittee. We may disagree on some things and some projects, but I believe you've been honest in working with us in the past, and I look forward to that continuing. Mr. Secretary, it's good to see you. 99-0. That's a pretty good score coming out of the Senate. I'd like to ask you about Gaza, if I can. They anticipate a famine is underway in Gaza. In the next few days, they anticipate 14,000 infants and children will die. Israel has decided to change its policy to release baby food into Gaza. I just have to ask you, as you must see the same pictures I do, you can't escape them, of these kids with pencil-thin arms, with ribs you can count, spindly legs, wide eyes, who are just on the cusp of death because of the policy of Israel in dealing with Hamas.
It is a symbol of what happens when politics delays action and humanity is pushed aside for strategy. The conditions on the ground are worsening by the day. Families trapped in Gaza are caught between war and survival, with no way to secure basic food, clean water, or medicine. The prediction of famine is based on real shortages, as baby formula and essential nutrition for infants have been blocked or restricted from entering. While Israel has now allowed some baby food to enter, experts have called this far from adequate to meet the desperate needs of the population. When you think of famine, you imagine it as something that builds over months or years, but in Gaza, it is happening within days. The urgency lies in the fact that starvation can weaken children so quickly that once they cross a certain point, even aid arriving later may not be enough to save them. The senator who raised the issue highlighted that this is not about denying Israel's right to defend itself or about excusing Hamas for its brutal terrorism. It is about recognizing that punishing children and families who have no part in the violence is both morally and strategically disastrous.
Now, let me make it clear for the record. I support Israel. I believe what happened October 7th was an act of terrorism, unforgivable act of terrorism, and they have a right to defend themselves, period. Number two, I believe Hamas is a terrorist organization. I do not believe that every Palestinian in Gaza territory is a member of Hamas or sympathetic with that band of terrorists, but many of them are. So today, three countries, France, United Kingdom, and Canada, made a statement which I'd like to summarize. You probably know this already. They said the resumption of aid into Gaza by Israel wholly inadequate. The United Kingdom paused free trade talks with Israel and sanctioned Israeli settlers. And then this statement, joint message by these three countries, allies of the United States. If Israel does not cease the renewed military offensive and lift its restrictions on humanitarian aid, we will take further concrete action in response. Mr. Secretary, are we on the wrong side of history in watching this unfold and not responding as these three countries have?
Well, we're not prepared to respond the way these three countries have, but we are prepared to say, as we have, and I think the Israelis in their statements today acknowledged, have engaged with our Israeli partners over the weekend and the last few days about the need to resume humanitarian aid. We anticipate that those flows will increase over the next few days and weeks. It's important that that be achieved. I actually had
When the famine warning in Gaza became a global concern, it was not just the voices within the United States Senate that raised alarms. Some of America's closest allies, nations that often stand side by side with Washington in matters of defense, trade, and diplomacy, chose a different path. France, the United Kingdom, and Canada issued a joint statement condemning Israel's restrictions on humanitarian aid, calling them wholly inadequate. Their words were not empty gestures. They were backed by action. The United Kingdom announced it would pause free trade talks with Israel, while sanctions were placed on Israeli settlers. These moves signaled a shift in how even Israel's allies were viewing the situation. For them, the line had been crossed. When children are starving and basic supplies are withheld, moral responsibility outweighs political convenience. This response matters because it shows that the famine in Gaza is not just a regional or isolated issue, but one that impacts global perceptions of justice and human rights. Allies of the United States were making it clear that humanitarian principles could not be sacrificed in the name of military strategy or political alignment. By choosing to take tangible steps, these countries were not just expressing disapproval, they were applying pressure in a way that could influence Israel's decisions. Pausing trade and imposing sanctions are not symbolic moves. They carry real economic and diplomatic consequences.
I actually had an opportunity when I was in Rome on Sunday or Saturday to see Cindy McCain, as you know, is involved with the World Food Program, discuss their distribution systems. She outlined for me exactly how they would distribute food and how the program would work if it were to be restarted. So suffice it to say that we support 100% the fact that there can be no future in Gaza for the people of Gaza as long as Hamas is around. And by the way, in your comments that you made, I know many of you have noticed, there's been a growing number of anti-Hamas protests and demonstrations as well. So there are people there that understand that this is the root cause of it. That said, you have this acute, immediate challenge of food and aid not reaching people, and you have existing distribution systems that could get them there. So we have, and continue to work, even though I've been here in hearings all week, all day, but continued to work with our Israeli partners and as I think they've acknowledged in the statement today that they've heard from us, to allow more aid in, because I believe they can achieve their objective of defeating Hamas while still allowing aid to enter in sufficient quantities.
I agree with you. I think what you just said should be our policy. But I don't think we should use these people, these Palestinians, particularly these children, as just a casualty of war. This is a designed attack by Israel into Gaza. This is a designed decision by Israel not to provide humanitarian aid, food, medicine, water. And we provide quite a bit of money to Israel for its own defense and for other purposes. Shouldn't we be more forthcoming to speak about this humanitarian crisis?
Yeah, I think
the most heartbreaking part of this crisis is that the famine threatening Gaza is not due to a lack of food in the world or a breakdown in humanitarian logistics. The aid exists. The systems to deliver it are already in place. The World Food Program, one of the most experienced organizations in dealing with crises of this scale, has assured global leaders that its distribution networks are fully prepared to deliver supplies the moment restrictions are lifted. Cindy McCain, who oversees the organization, personally confirmed that trucks, contractors, and local systems were ready to begin distributing food and medicine effectively and immediately. There would be no delays, no confusion, no wasted time. The moment the gates opened, aid could start reaching families and children who are clinging to life. This reality makes the situation even more devastating. It is not a logistical failure or an impossible challenge preventing children from being fed. It is political decisions that hold everything back. Israel's concerns about aid being diverted by Hamas are real, and there have been instances where supplies meant for civilians were stolen by militant groups. But the World Food Program has developed methods to minimize those risks, to get aid into the hands of people who need it most while limiting opportunities for corruption or theft.
I think there's two things that Israel has expressed, and I don't want to speak for them because they speak for often on this topic. The first is their complaints that humanitarian aid is often stolen and siphoned off by Hamas elements. Well, it has. There's no doubt that there has happened. That said, the question is whether it has to be. The question is there a way to reliably reach as many people as possible and prevent the humanitarian crisis you're describing, while not enriching Hamas or providing Hamas relief? And we believe there is a way to do it. And we want to be supportive of that way to do it. And we've encouraged them to do it in that way, and we think we've made progress.
Did you ask Cindy McCain whether Hamas was diverting food supplies from the people in Gaza?
We didn't discuss that. We talked mostly about, I wanted to get a description of what the distribution points look like. How can you get assistance to the most number of people as quickly as possible in an orderly way based on where they live and where they are in different parts of Gaza?
Is this an emergency humanitarian situation in your view?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I think we all see the same images. The question that I had in my mind in meeting with her and discussing is, do we have the mechanisms in place to quickly start, if in fact an agreement could be reached to allow humanitarian aid to flow? Did we have the mechanics in place to allow the World Food Program and their contractors to go in and immediately begin to provide it? And she assured me that they do, that they could, because one of the arguments or one of the concerns that existed is that the organizations that could do the distribution were not on the ground or were not capable of starting so quickly. She assured us that they were.
If we have this in place, what are we waiting for? These children are dying.
Well, it's my understanding, again, I've been here all day, but it's my understanding that starting yesterday and moving through the next few days, aid will increasingly flow in, and hopefully that will allow these programs to work.
I certainly hope so too. Thank you, Mr. Secretary.